This past Sunday, I went down to the Jean Leahy Park, braving the cold with other local Omaha leaders for a vigil organized by Omaha for Us to witness to the tragedy in Colorado Springs at Club Q last month. Sat Senator Carol Blood on my right and our friend Eli Brigatuso on my left, who many of you got to hear speak here not a couple weeks ago. Tearful speakers reflecting on tragic and unnecessary violence, a call to end the hateful rhetoric that's lobbed at the LGBTQIA2S plus community, followed by lifting song after lifting song by the River City Mixed Chorus. A real roll of emotions in that cold December air, and as I moved to speak, I found myself not really knowing what to say. As a minister, sometimes we're looked at as the people who know what to say, but my time as a chaplain during COVID has taught me that sometimes there isn't much that we can say to make things better in the face of such heartbreaking violence. But sometimes silence, sometimes a little bit of space to notice our feelings, how our hearts are moving, the warmth coming off of somebody standing beside us, a little bit of silence to reflect on those people who by their very presence gave us permission to be authentic and to be real in this world. And so I kept time on my watch, because sometimes these things can get out of hand if I'm not paying attention. And as I, ever being distractible, I found myself drawn to these birds over the buildings. Not uncommon at all in downtown Omaha, but I watch these birds and how they move in a flock together, looping from the building to come back and rearrange themselves. Over and over and over again, they did this. And as I moved back to my chair after the silence and heard the other speakers lead the community to action, to healing, my mind stuck with those birds. I think they might know something that we sometimes forget. But not only are we stronger together, we are fundamentally safer together. And these more than human friends, for their own bird devices and for their own bird reasons, making these arcs, coming back, rearranging themselves, even in the middle of a heartbreak, to be able to find time to look and to see, to notice these expressions of nature that can remind us that for all of the pain in the world, a significant part of it ain't so bad. And I reckon we can say that it is a wonderful world. A world full of beauty and possibility, even as the trees are going to sleep and the days are getting darker. Clearly riffing off that old song by Louis Armstrong, Satchmo. Something about it just reminds me of Christmas, and I'm not sure, or this time of year, I should say, more broadly speaking. I grew up Christian, so Christmas is close to my heart this time of year. And something about it just reminds me of this time of giving and sharing, a time when it's cold, and some people do become very lonely because they're experiencing a first holiday without their loved ones. Maybe they're far from home. Maybe a loved one has passed. It's going to be a time of extremes, extreme togetherness, and extreme loneliness. And so I think this message from Louis Armstrong is both necessary and illuminating this time of year. So critical on the edge of grief and fear, to reflect on this world suffused with wonder, even despite all of the ways that we wound it. Wonder. Wonder is our theme for this month. I'm an etymology sucker, so I did some research. It comes from the Old English wondrian, a marvelous thing, an object of astonishment, containing this transitive sense to inspire curiosity in. Well, sometimes the words change. But in this instance, it feels like this meaning has been preserved across the ages. Wonder, wonder. The wonders of this world never fail to evoke a sense of curiosity and marvel. Plugging into wonder gives us a means by which we can stay rooted. What lets us rise? The connection between us, the connection between community members, our emergence from the more than human world, our intimate connections to it. When astronauts go to space, they have to carve out a piece of the atmosphere and take it with them. It proves to me that we are this earth, an expression of its beauty and its wonder. The swooping of birds, the evergreens throwing off the winter, the blush of the sun as it dips over the horizon, paw prints in the snow, telling the presence of some wild friend in our yard, the play of children, the presence of some new friend, old friend, the first cup of a warm drink on a cold morning, the bright blessed day and the dark sacred night. These, so many more things about this world can move our hearts to wonder and to consider what is worth rising for. Our hearts in such a hurry, we're often bound to pass over these little gifts, these little moments in our day. It's all like a big blur. The whole week might pass you by, peppered with tragedies big and small. We find ourselves on the other side of a Sunday and we might know how we got here. Maybe I'm speaking for myself. Sometimes it is like that. Sometimes the world is just too fast. A moment to slow down and to notice what is out our window, what is under our nose, what is beside us, what is wonderful. Our brains, evolved as they are, to sense and seek out danger. This only makes sense. We are still primates after all. I think we forget that sometimes. We're still animal expressions of this earth, and so yeah, we look out for danger. And now that we're not so often having to avoid a tiger or a wolf, I haven't in a while, friends. Our minds turn to other sources. What does my neighbor think of me? Or to the great calamities of our time, and of course, these things do deserve our attention, but the little gifts in the world, the simple wonders, these deserve our attention just as well. If for no other reason than these can bring us back to life, bring us closer to one another. And this can sound a little Pollyannish perhaps, because there is so much bad in the world right now. There is triple-demics and there is war, there is economic uncertainty. You might even say, who are you to say the world is so wonderful? Is war wonderful? Is poverty and oppression wonderful? Pipelines spilling into creeks in Kansas, bullets breaking joy, people just being plain unkind to one another. Bullies. Of course, this world hurts. Of course, we hurt when people are mean to us. That hurts. When we see pollution, defiling ecologies, yes, that can really hurt. And I can be a little Pollyannish, perhaps. In our psych evaluations to be ministers, that is what they noted of me. Perhaps it's a survival mechanism in some way to push back the woundedness of the world, but I think a little dash of optimism can steer us away from what threatens to consume and to dominate and cloud our minds and our vision, to steal us away from what is really precious in this world. And even Louis Armstrong himself got a criticism for a song regarding this. He says, I'm not going to do an impression. It's too iconic. He says, some of you young folks have been saying to me, hey, Pops, what you mean? What a wonderful world. How about all them wars all over the place? You call them wonderful? How about hunger and pollution? That ain't so wonderful either. Well, how about listening to old Pops for a minute? It seems to me it ain't the world that's so bad, but what we're doing to it. All I'm saying is, see what a wonderful world it would be if only we would give it a chance. Love, baby. Love. That's the secret. If lots more of us loved each other, we'd solve lots more problems, and then this world would be a gasser. A gasser, he said. I wonder what the world might be like if we listened to Louis and those other folks, luminaries, Jesus Christ, Fred Rogers, this Mary Oliver, you name it, these people who call us to reflect, to wonder, to love this world into realness. And maybe that can seem overwhelming considering how vast the scope is and how monolithic the problems, but it doesn't have to happen all at once. Just one or two places. What if that happened here? What if that happened in your relationship or your family? What if? Or just a friend group. I wonder this in the ruins of mom and pop shops choked out by box stores, in small towns like my own hometown lost to the opioid epidemic. I wonder at the edge of a creek black with oil. And sometimes I forget. I think we all forget sometimes. But I find myself remembering that it is a wonderful world. And some days you just got to say it. Some days you just have to say it like a statement of faith. And in those moments, it is an act of resistance. It can be revolutionary to say. To not let our spirits be crushed, to try to reinflate, to refill the empty, broken spaces, to reclaim it as wonderful. Not uncritically, not without nuance, not without a heart that is also at the same time open to the hurt of the world, but turning to those simple gifts. It's a wonder because it's in turning to the wonders of the world we can be reminded that this world is worth loving. It's worth rising for. It's worth taking risks for. Even if some things are unsavable, unsalvageable, it is worth our presence at the table. It is worth having our hands in the work. It is worth having our hearts connected to that which is bigger than us, to that which we are fundamentally connected and wound up in, this great web of life. In that call to care, in that attempt to try, love is there. Wonder is there. May we be there. And in the face of really scary things, friends, existential threats to ecologies and bodies, it is common for us to find ourselves afraid. It's made all the worse when the weather turns against us. I have friends sliding on ice, myself included. Our bodies, like all bodies, are chemical phenomena. And when we can crumple, we lose out on the uplift brought by regular exposure to something as simple as sunlight. Seasonal affective disorder, as it's called, is a real thing. Tangled up together, the weather and the worries, we might be so overwhelmed and heavy-hearted that we don't know where to start in unweaving the wicked problems that plague our day and haunt our hearts. Where does one start? Both of these have this oppressive quality to them. Natural evils emergent from the human world, plague storms, so on, moral evils that ultimately emerge from the same nature. The bloom of the flower and the black hole, they spring from a common source. Going across the ocean for a moment, thinking how we might respond, how we might center ourselves in the face of heartbreak. Well, going to France. Certain French existentialists might call such things, such heartbreaking realities, absurd. Absurdity, that quality of existence that is so strange as to be nauseating. And the rise of rhetoric against our LGBTQ friends and anti-Semitic rhetoric, Albert Camus wrote many a book and even helped coin the concept of absurdism comes to mind. An Algerian Jew who penned some of his finest work while living under Nazi occupation in France. And his novels tend to have a pretty heavy air about them. Plagues, uncertainty, crisis of the heart. But at the heart of this question, why bother when levied by those characters, succumbing to the pains of the day is met by a resounding, because we can, because this world still contains beauty, simple gifts, little joys, small wonders, even within one's own heart, if we'd but slow down and look and love what blooms from the cracks. I'm going to pen this poem I'd like to share with you. In the midst of hate, I found there was within me an invincible love. In the midst of tears, I found there was within me an invincible smile. In the midst of chaos, I found there was within me an invincible calm. In the midst of winter, I found there was within me an invincible summer, and that makes me happy, for it says that no matter how hard the world pushes against me, within us, there is something stronger, something better, pushing right back. Still here. So why turn to these wonders? Well, why wear an oxygen mask tank when you go diving? Why drink water on a hot day? Why hold hands when walking through a crowd? Why does a flower have roots? The wonders of this wonderful world, the little joys, the little beauties, the little moments, those hold us to the source of life. They nourish and feed us. They give us cause to connect with a love that is bigger than us, a love that we are a part of. In the midst of winter, that invincible summer, in the midst of woe and worry, a wonderful world still. We've lifted up this idea of slowing down to notice the world before. But again, let's turn to this simple practice. And some spiritual practice can sometimes feel like a great big endeavor. It doesn't have to be so. It can be a simple part of our commute to work, or drinking our coffee, our role as a parent or caregiver, drawing a smiley face in the ashes on the floor, cultivating and creating beauty in the face of calamity, one bit at a time. It's a revolutionary act, a dance. Floating in a great uncertainty, we creatures suspended on a sunbeam upon this wounded world. No first cause in sight for many of us, we may still say, with a radical spirit, a free heart, with this free faith, it is a wonderful world. Amen. And blessed be.